Welcome everyone to See I Am Me. This is your host Rashawn. Here again. Today we're going to talk about maximizing success. And we got my boy Jamy who's going to be on today. So with that being said, let's go. Hello, everyone. It's me, Rashawn Warren, the host of See I Am Me. And like I said before, we're going to talk about some insights to success. We're going to talk about stories and leadership strategies. With that, let's bring my boy Jamy on.
Man, Rashawn, I appreciate the great intro and the music. The music got me pumped. You know, I hope I can live up to that that motivational intro video that you had. That was awesome.
No, I appreciate it. You know what, Jamy? Hey, I'm glad to have you on today. And before we get started, tell me your story. Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just some guy that was a college basketball coach for a long time and an administrator at the athletic level. I'm a has-been athlete, maybe a never was athlete, depending on who you talk with. But hey, I played before the internet, so nobody knows if I was really bad or not. But grew up in sports my whole life. That was my passion. And now I write books, do a podcast. I speak to people all over the country, trying to help them be better teammates, be better leaders, more successful in life, whatever they're doing. So we just try to make a difference where we can. You know, just one small fish in a big pond.
Oh yeah, so that's a great layout. So leadership, coaching, development, speaking, with all of that stuff inside of your mind every day, I guess it would be rather easy to just show up on the spot and start telling people about the things that you notice from your interactions with them. Is that something that you can do fairly easy?
Yeah, it really is. The speaking part, when I transitioned 7 years ago and started my own business, my own consulting business for leadership, the speaking part of it, the making content, the creating content is the easy part. It was almost like taking me back, you know, when we first met way back in the day. I was a graduate assistant in the men's basketball program at Kent State. You were a player there. It almost took me back to being a graduate assistant, almost in grad school, where you know, the coaching basketball or the basketball part was easy, but all the behind the scene type things, all the inspiring players, you know, you and I both have a fond affinity for the coach that was at Kent State. He was a great motivator. A lot goes into that. A lot goes into building a team and getting people to come together, to gel together. Well, when I started my own business, the speaking part was easy. The behind the scenes stuff was difficult. The building the business stuff was difficult. So yeah, I can get up and talk because it's not like a speech is memorized, it's internalized. There's things I'm passionate about and things that the audience wants to hear and also needs to hear. And like if I go speak somewhere, I already know what that audience wants because the director or the coach or the whoever put the event on has let me know what they need out of a guest speaker. And so I'm able to hopefully provide some stories, some illustrations that help motivate and inspire them a little bit better. But, you know, always in the back of my mind, there's always that thing, man, if my wife gets a hold of this video or this audio, is she going to call BS on me? Is she going to be like, man, you don't do this in real life. Why are you saying this on stage? And I'm like, yeah, probably guilty. So I'm glad she doesn't watch my podcast or listen to my podcast sometimes because she might be like, you know what? You probably should try doing some of this stuff at home as well.
Well, great lay down. And I'm pretty sure, you know, you're leading the way all the way, right?
Right.
So, hey, thanks for that quick lay down. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to go to a quick sponsor break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to jump into this thing full force.
Hey, it's AC of AC Sports Live, an interactive sports talk show where your comments are part of the show. Every show we focus on the sports stories of today with commentary on sports takes, my 2 cents, which is a reaction to my social media feed, Sports Flicks, where we take a look at sports movies and give a quick review, We have a segment called Mental Reps, where we have words of inspiration to help battle the dark side of men's mental health. And then there's the Tender Love Report. Who's being soft or petty in the world of sports? All takes are welcome under one condition. Say it with your chest. I'll see you there.
Hi, Joel Maurer, founder of Dink Ninjas. Dink Ninjas was dreamed up and started right here in Austin, Texas, a dynamic pickleball community. We arm pickleballers with the paddles, apparel, and accessories to dink like a ninja. Dink Ninjas is dedicated to supporting mental health awareness and cancer research. Shop our full lineup at dinkninjas.com.
All right, so we're back. So success is a choice, you know, the name of your podcast. But what I'm interested in right now is tell me about your journey, you know, from working with college athletics to being a professional speaker and now team consultant. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, my whole life I wanted to be in sports. And so I became a coach. I went to college, played some sports in college, and was lucky enough to go on and have a collegiate coaching experience, both with men and women, mainly in the women's side of things as a head coach at some small colleges, mainly in the South. And then I became an athletic director at a large high school in Indiana, a large athletic department. But I really wanted to be able to, leadership was a passion of mine. Leadership was something that was important to me. Not that I always did it well, but it was something that I knew that we could always get better at, and it could affect and influence and have such an impact in so many areas of our life. And so I felt like I could have a bigger impact leaving one school and starting my own business and going out and trying to impact as many people as possible and spread the message of positivity, but not like pom-pom positivity, or the fake positivity, rainbows and butterflies, but the positivity of we can do this because X, Y, or Z. We can do this because we've trained or we've developed these habits, or we can develop these habits, we can train, and then we can be successful. And the thought of choices, we all are making choices in our life. Now, I am nothing like I used to be. I've gained weight. I'm not the athlete I used to be, all that kind of stuff. But I think about my choices. I've never accidentally ripped open a Reese's peanut butter cup package and been like, oh, I thought I was peeling an orange. We make choices. We don't accidentally, most of the time, fall into bad habits. We don't accidentally fall into X, Y, or Z, which then leads to certain results. Now, we might not realize we're going down that path because we continually make little poor choices here and there and there and there, and it becomes habits eventually. And so I thought that was something that I really wanted to put out there and interview people and talk about some things. You know, what are some just great little habits, great little choices that we can make? It doesn't matter how big or small, just are we making choices every day that's positive? You know, what's our approach? What's our mentality? What's our attitude when we get stopped at a red light? You know, most of us get kind of ticked. We get stopped at a red light when we're in our car, but are we thankful and grateful when we get a green light? You know, we just constantly are battling, almost like a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. We're kind of battling with the choices we make. Most of us know the choices we should make, or the mindset we should have, or the thoughts we should have, but we choose not to partake in those because we want what we want right now. And so that'll sometimes distract us or trip us up from our real goal down the road. And then before we know it, it's like, man, I'm not successful, or man, you know, Ray Sean's had all this success and I haven't, or so-and-so got this promotion and I didn't. Well, it started 2 years ago with some of the little choices you were making. And before you know it, you're not as successful as you would like to be.
Oh yeah, that's a good rundown, which leads me to ask you this. You know, all the time that you've been around people, you've been coaching them, you've been managing them, you've been instructing them, you've been giving them all sorts of advice, you've been consulting them, drawing from the lessons that you have as a middle-aged man. Like how have you been able to shape and take all of the things that you learned up to this point and give back to people in a way which they can accept it?
Yeah, you know, we're a lot of times made up of all the choices, but also all the experiences that we go through, and maybe how we respond to those, the lessons we learn, and maybe not even always 100% the lessons we learn from what I do, but maybe from what Rayshawn does. I see Rayshawn doing something, and I learn something positively or negatively from him. And so I'm able to then maybe take and connect the dots a little bit, and maybe communicate those lessons to somebody else, so maybe they don't have to go through the same thing, or if they're experiencing something similar, these are some of the pitfalls, or these are some of the things you should look out for. Now, the important thing about that, though, is it's not just enough for me to have these experience and all this knowledge up here. Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that a tomato doesn't go into a fruit salad. We can have this knowledge, this information, but we have to be able to translate it and communicate it in such a way that people want that knowledge, and that's wisdom. And a lot of times, like, I'm dealing with a lot of teenagers. Working with a lot of college age athletes. They don't want to hear old man, talking about back in the day in the 80s and the 90s and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and, back in my day. They don't want to hear that stuff. So I have to be wise about how I communicate that message to them. So I need to constantly keep it fresh. I need to constantly understand where they're at. I need to stay in tune with what they're going through. Now, that doesn't mean that my favorite singer, my favorite entertainer needs to be their favorite. Like, I don't have to adopt all of their favorite video games and their favorite entertainers. And I don't have to scroll through TikTok as many hours as they do to understand them. But I do need to be aware of what they're going through, of what they're feeling, the things that they're facing now. I didn't have the internet when I was growing up. They have the internet. That's just one little simple thing. But in order for me to communicate a good message to them, I have to understand where they're at. It's not just about me and the message I want to give them. It needs to be, all right, how can they be inspired? How are they going to listen? What is going to be that thing that motivates them to pay attention to me? And so I've got to find that with every audience that I go in front of.
Yeah, as a youngster, from high school sports to college sports, I was constantly seeking someone to help develop me. Of course, at that time, I wasn't like, hey, you develop me, but I wanted to become better. I wanted to be the best version of myself. I wanted to have belief in who I was and who I could one day become. And that stuff was predicated on people like you, having an understanding of like, hey, you know what? Today, I'm talking to the college kid. Today, I'm talking to the organizational leaders at some higher organization or something. Or today, I'm talking to the elementary school kids, being able to navigate through those different things based off your experiences. So since you talk about all of that and you're obviously impacting people, like, what inspired you to transition from sports to saying, hey, man, I'm going to go out there and get into this leadership training and motivational speaking? What inspired you?
Yeah, I was always somebody that could listen to somebody motivate, and I'm like, hey, I was a listener. Now, maybe that made me a nerd in high school or college or as a young adult, but I wanted to listen. I wanted to take in information. I wanted to be the best I could be, just like you said, the best version of myself. That was something that I always wanted. But not all of my teammates, not all of my friends were like that. And so it always was, all right, how can you reach those people? Because you can bang your head against the wall saying, well, I told them exactly what they should do and they didn't do it. Or I told you. How many times do I have to tell you? Well, maybe you got to tell them in a way that they understand. And so the people aspect of it to me was always fascinating. And so I'm coaching, and it took me a long time to be an okay coach. I don't think you're ever amazing coach. There are some people that win a ton of games, but you're always learning, I should say. You've never arrived as a coach or a leader. And so I was a young head coach. I did everything possible to put myself in a position to be a head coach at the college level. And at the age of 27, I was a head coach. I was the youngest NCAA head coach in America. Well, 4 years later, after a lot of mistakes, I actually was coach of the year one of those 4 years. But 4 years at that first school, after 4 years, they allowed me to take my talents elsewhere. I got resigned. They let me go elsewhere. And that was really an eye opener for me, that I need to be coachable. I want my players to be coachable. I need to be coachable. I need to be constantly learning. It can't be about just me. And that's what it was for those 4 years. It was about me. It was about my program. Even if I'm trying to get Ray Sean to be a great kid, it's really so it's a reflection of people say, well, man, that Jamy, Coach Bechler has a great program. Look at how respectful Ray Sean is. Look at his sportsmanship. Look at his leadership. But it was more so people would say, I have a great program. I have a great culture. So even though I was doing some good things, it was still about me. And after getting fired, I talked to one of my mentors, and he essentially said, Jamy, you have an opportunity right this minute to decide your future, how you're going to approach everything. Are you going to be bitter or better? And for me, that was huge, though I didn't understand it at first, because I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you've just told me like 100 things the school did wrong, where if they'd done these things better, you would have been a better coach. You didn't tell me any of the 100 of things that you did wrong or you could have improved on as a coach to make your life a lot better, but more importantly, to make your players' lives a lot better. You're focused on things you can't control. You weren't even thinking about the things you can control. That might not have given you a different result, but it would have made you a different person, a different coach. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty deep, like kumbaya moment or something. But bitter or better. And I decided right then I wanted to be a better coach. I didn't want to play the victim. I wanted to be the victor, you know, to use a cliche. And so it doesn't mean that I automatically changed and became a great leader and a great coach, but my mindset changed right away to, hey, I'm going to try to do this every day. Every day I'm going to try to be better and look for ways to make other people better, to make myself better, but to make the situations better. So it was a continual journey for me of getting better, not so I'm a better coach so that I get accolades, but I get better self-improvement so that I have more in my tank to give to other people. Cause I wasn't doing that before. All my self-improvement was just so I was better, period. End of story. And I started realizing more and more this leadership stuff is really about others. How can I make other people and situations better? So the journey continued. Eventually I got out of coaching. I went in to be an athletic director at a huge school, lots of basketball tradition, huge arena, lots of championships. But I started to get the bug for entrepreneurial, being an entrepreneur, to starting my own business, to having a wider impact than just one school. And so that's when I got into the John Maxwell training, got trained by John Maxwell and his teachers, his teaching staff, and I got my certification in that. And that kind of jump-started me to being a speaker, a consultant, working with sports teams from the professional level, college, high school, it doesn't matter. You know, there's a need everywhere. And so it's been a fun journey. And I've not arrived by any stretch of the imagination, whether it's as a business person or as just a leadership guy. You know, I'd love to say, hey, I'm this expert at leadership. Every day I'm learning something new.
Yeah. So it's all about self-awareness. You know, like you were winning, you were doing good stuff. You're a coach of the year. You got all these good things going your way. And then, like you said, they sent you on your way. But but you went from there and you was like, you know what? You did some self-reflection. You thought about who you were. Some people helped you with that, kind of like what you're doing with other people. Like, hey, Jamy, look at yourself. What do you really want out of this? Is this really where you're trying to go? This is what other people are seeing from you. And that kind of ties into emotional intelligence and the understanding of yourself and how you see yourself and how other people view you, and meshing that together for greater understanding. But then you also talked about, you know, being certified with John Maxwell. So how do you incorporate those principles into your leadership training and coaching?
Yeah, you know, going through the training, the John Maxwell training, it really helped me see some different perspectives on people, different learning styles, different ways to get your message across, you know, using a lot more stories. That's probably the one thing that the John Maxwell stuff trained me to be a better speaker. Was before I went through the John Maxwell training, I was very much like a lecturer. I'm going to give you facts. I'm going to give you information. I'm going to preach to you. A lecturer or a preacher, however you want to say it, but the boring kind of preacher. After going through the John Maxwell type of stuff, it started to become every minute or every 2 minutes, you need to tell a story. You need to give an illustration. You need to catch their attention. And it's almost like when you watch politics or these political candidates for any party, they might have research, they might have stats, but the thing that stands out in your mind a lot of times is when they talk about, well, I met little Fannie Eubanks in Omaha, Nebraska in a cafe, and she told me about her granddaughter. And it's like, that might be the only example out of a million, but you remember that because it was a story. And so the John Maxwell is great at telling stories and giving illustrations. And so that's the biggest thing I took out of that is let's tell stories. And, mentioned earlier, well, back in my day, well, you got to adjust too with your stories, because if you keep giving stories from the 1960s and 70s and 80s, kids aren't going to listen to that. So you got to make it real to them. And it can't always be, well, back in my day, I was this kind of athlete, or I did this one day. You got to keep it real, fresh, and bring your stories alive. But the John Maxwell stuff is very much into servant leadership. It's very much about, doing stuff for others, being humble. But the X's and O's part of speaking, the biggest thing was using stories and illustrations. But, I don't use the John Maxwell content anymore. I did that when I first started off. I have my own content now, but my own content is very heavily influenced by John Maxwell.
Oh yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you had a chance to experience that. I'm glad you just shared those insights. Like I'm a good storyteller, I think. I mean, let my wife tell it. She's always like, "Oh, here you go with your story again." All right, so we're going to go through a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to try to talk about some of the challenges that you may face working with teams.
So here's what happens with the Rundown with Rubio. Every day I do these. I cover 5 different news stories. Everything happens for a reason. That's one. Number 2, there are winners and losers of life. These are the pillars of the Rubio method. Accept and embrace. You'll hear me say it all the time. Working hard is not enough, and confidence is the key. These are my morals of life, and these are also the pillars of the Rubio method.
Hello, I'm Dr. Isabel, and this is my husband, nutritional chef Michael. Did you know that your brain is your #1 muscle? And when you take super good care of your brain health, your life will be amazing.
We'd love for you to come join us in the Healthy Brain Club 12-week live coaching program. To learn more and to grab your seat today, go to doctoronamission.com under membership. Only 40 seats available. Early bird access now. We'll see you in the club.
So we're back. So like I said before we went to break, wanted to talk about some challenges. So I'm interested. What are some of the common challenges that teams face? And how do you help them overcome the obstacles?
Yeah, probably the biggest one that all teams face is the self. It's about me. And that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. But having been a long time basketball player, a teammate, it's a big deal when you have a team that you have 5 players on the basketball court working together as one to achieve one goal, or you have a bunch of 5 individuals that are all worried about me, or my agenda. There's a stark difference. And you could even have 5 individuals that are very talented, but if they're kind of all going in a different direction, you still might experience some success, score some baskets, win some games, but you probably fall short of your ultimate goals, your ultimate, in terms of maximizing your potential. And so the biggest thing that we face when we're working with mainly sports teams, but you see this in a bank, you see this in a hospital, you see this even in a restaurant. People don't see their roles as interconnected. People don't see what I do as affecting Rayshawn positively or negatively. They don't see that, hey, we need to come together. I know it's cliche, but together everyone achieves more. Team, we can do more together than we can do individually. And so getting people to buy in, take ownership in the team concept, whether they're playing or not, whether they're experiencing success or not, that's the biggest challenge we face all the time. So maybe a coach will bring us in to work with their team. That's normally the #1 thing is, hey, our team is selfish. Our team is not coming together. They're not gelling. There's no chemistry. Can you help us with that? And so there's two parts to that. And I'll be very simplistic, but there's two parts, and it doesn't matter if it's a sports team or business, or even I would say in a platoon or the military. We tend to look at it. All right, well, is it the team member's fault? Is it the player's fault? Is it the athlete's fault? Is it the worker's fault? Or is it the boss's fault? Well, the problem with that is it can be both. More times than not, it's a combination of, yes, it's everybody's responsibility. We look at fault. That's like the blame game is like the best game we play. All right, well, it's Rayshawn's fault. He missed that shot at the end, or he did X, Y, or Z that didn't give us a chance to be successful. It's his fault. When we're focused on the fault, playing the blame game, oftentimes we're not finding the solution, or we're not looking at what I could have done better myself. So going back to when I got fired, I was looking at the 100 different things that school didn't do that they should have done to help me be a better coach. But I didn't look at the 100 things I could have done myself to help me be a better coach. The blame game, we look at Rayshawn didn't do what he was supposed to do, and that cost us. Okay, but maybe I could have done 2 or 3 things differently that would have put us in a position where Rayshawn could have never hurt us at the end of a game. So what we don't do sometimes as leaders is we don't take responsibility for what's going on. We say, hey, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. You might be right, but it's 100% your responsibility to figure out a way to have prepared Rayshawn or to prepare your team members for whatever they're going to face, to put people in the right positions. Or if it does happen, it's your responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. We see that in politics. We see that in business. We see that in sports. People, leaders wash their hands of, well, it's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I don't care whose fault it is. Let's be responsible. Let's all be responsible for finding solutions and moving us forward so that we make situations and people better, as opposed to focusing too much on whose fault it is. Yes, there comes a point where you have to correct some behaviors, or you have to identify where the underlying issue was, but we tend to focus way too much on that underlying issue and kind of shirk responsibility, shirk that blame, when really as a leader, we need to be embracing that. So going back to your question, the selfishness oftentimes on our teams, unfortunately, stems from the leader. A lot of time that CEO, that manager, that coach, we're the ones that are facilitating the selfishness, or we're not doing anything to curb the selfishness. Just bringing Jamy in, man, I love cashing checks. Okay. I mean, my son is weird. He likes to live indoors. He likes to wear shoes, and he likes to eat food. All that stuff costs money, but at the end of the day, I want those teams that I'm working with to get better. And so they're not going to get better if a manager, a CEO, a coach just brings me in and says, fix them. Those 15 players, those workers, man, they're lazy. They're selfish. Fix them. Well, a lot of times, yeah, they're probably being lazy. They're not maximizing their success. But as a leader, you're not inspiring them. As a leader, you're not setting them up for a success. As a leader, you're not preparing them. You're not equipping them, empowering them to be as successful as they can. And so let's work on both sides of it. Let's not just say, all right, well, it's your fault or it's their fault. Let's work on everybody getting better. And together, the rising tide lifts all ships. And I know that's a little bit more than you even asked, but a lot of times the selfishness part of a team, that's the biggest problem. But the root of that problem isn't always just as simple as, well, Rayshawn's a selfish player because he wants to be all conference or he wants all the glory. Well, maybe as a coach, you're not rewarding Rayshawn when he does these little things that nobody notices. Maybe as a coach, the only time you pat Rayshawn on the back is when he scores 30 points, when he has 3 dunks in a game, when he does all this stuff that gets the glory. That's the only time you praise him. Well, if that's the only time you're praising him, then you're going to get what you reward. You're going to get what you reinforce. You want a culture where people are unselfish, then you have to facilitate that and nurture that and cultivate that culture where you're rewarding people, reinforcing people for their actions of unselfishness.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get locked in, right? And I'm gonna act like I'm a coach right now, right? So everyone's kind of worried about their job.
Mhm.
I mean, the fact of the matter, especially if it's something that, if you're the breadwinner, is something that sustains your family, and you really want to do well. And sometimes when you really want to do well, you get away from the team concept, right? Like you said, together everyone achieves more. You probably go into the organization understanding that, but then at some point you're like, well, I'm not doing well. And then what we start to do as coaches, we look for the best people, right? The best people on the team. When we've been preaching together, everyone achieves more, but we look for the best person who's going to probably get you to the ultimate goal that you've set. So if Jamy is the 30-point a game scorer, Jamy probably can kick the ball into the stands. Jamy probably can say, hey, you know what? I'm mad today. But you wouldn't afford that to everyone else on the court. Maybe that guy who's just riding the bench. Oh, they just ride the bench, right? So what you just did was you started to create a culture where people are different. You start to create a culture where the percentage of importance on the team starts to rear itself. And then the players or other people within the organization, right? The players start to realize that, and they start to conversate. Now the culture is becoming what some would deem toxic. I don't really like that word, but toxic, right?
Yep.
And now not only do you have to try to reel everyone back in, but you're still trying to take care of the person that's ultimately probably going to help you keep your job. When I explain it to you like that, do you see that, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%, because that's the low hanging fruit. That's the shortcut. That's the easy way, is to fist bump Rayshawn after he scores 30 to keep Rayshawn happy, because I feel like as a coach, well, I need Rayshawn in order to win. Well, maybe, but here's the thing. Rayshawn's never scored a basket without 4 other players on the court. That's pretty much an impossibility unless you have like a technical foul to start the game, and you shoot a free throw before the jump ball even goes. Rayshawn, as good as he might be, he still needs somebody else to give him the ball. John Wooden, the legendary UCLA coach, used to say it takes 10 hands to make a basket. It takes everybody together, setting screens, making the right pass, all that kind of stuff. But think of your team, as opposed to thinking of it like we've kind of been talking about the negative of it. Flip it around a little bit. Think about your team. All right, Steph hits a shot to win the game at the buzzer. Everyone's excited. What if you prop up, Draymond for taking a charge with 5 seconds to go to even give you guys the ball back so Steph could hit the shot? Or you praise Clay because Clay set that screen that even got Steph open. Man, Steph, I knew you were going to hit that shot because you were wide open. And you know why you're wide open? Because Clay, amazing screen, my man. That was awesome. Yeah. When you start praising these things, it might not happen overnight, but your team members start to see, oh, well, coach's actions are aligning with his words. When he says the team, he means it. And I didn't even know coach saw that. Because most coaches would have just praised, the guy that hit the shot, or, the guy that scores 3 touchdowns in a football game, not the right guard who created a hole, or not even the wide receiver way out wide on the run play that sold it like it was a pass, and all the deep safeties cheated over on him, and that allowed the running back to get extra yards. Those little things, when you start pointing out those things and catching people being good, they start to do those things more often. In my household, I am supposed to do the dishes. I'm not very good at the dishes, but that's my role. I'm supposed to do the dishes. I'm the dishwasher. I'm also supposed to pick up my socks off the floor. That's not like an extra closet of mine. I'm supposed to do those things. That's something that you probably should do in life. Mm-hmm. Well, when my wife pats me on the back and says, hey, Jamy, great Great job. I really appreciate you doing dishes. That makes me want to do dishes a little bit more. I might not be excited about it, but I might just a little bit more be motivated to do those dishes. Early on as a coach, it was all about me. Why am I going to pat Rayshawn on the back for blocking out? Why am I going to pat him on the back for running the floor hard? That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, but not everybody does that. Promote, reinforce, reward the things that you want people to do, and they will keep giving that to you more and more and more, especially if you have a decent relationship with them where you've connected with them a little bit more. But you reward people, you catch them being good. You don't reward them for not doing things though. You don't say, "Hey, great job. Hey Jamie, great job on those dishes. But I didn't do them." Yeah, but I'm just trying to be positive because I heard this positive guy on a podcast. I'm just trying to be positive. No, that's BS.
Yeah.
You don't give them that. And we've all, Rayshawn, you were a great athlete, back in the day. And I see you now. I mean, you're ripped. You're still a good athlete. You still know where the weight room is. But anyways, back when you were playing, you had cheerleaders. You would see these cheerleaders. And there were probably games, maybe not with you playing at Dunbar, but there were games where the opponent would be down 20 points at the end of the game, and the cheerleaders are still saying, "We're number one. We're going to win." They're doing their cheers. They're oblivious to the game. We don't need pom-pom positivity where we're just cheering just to cheer and be positive. We need positivity of, hey, we're going to do this because I've seen you do this. Now, it might not be we're going to win this game if we're down 20, but it might be, you know what? We're going to win this last 60 seconds. We're going to go down swinging. Or you know what? We're going to win this game, or we're going to do this, or you can do this, Rayshawn, because I saw you do this Tuesday in practice. I know you did this. You give them positive vibes, positive messages. You put things in their head because you've seen them do it in the past. You give them some substance to that. So that's where that positivity comes in. That's where you're really inspiring your people, not just the people that have the success that anybody can see. Anybody can see you just scored 30 points or had 3 touchdowns. The dumbest person in the stands knows that. What they don't know is that thing you did back in the third quarter that was at a key point in the game, and you did this. You blocked out, maybe not even got the rebound, but you blocked out their best player, couldn't get the rebound, and that ended the quarter instead of them getting an extra bucket, which could have been the difference in the game. Those are the things that you start pointing those out, whether it's sports or business or life. And all of a sudden your teenager son will start wanting to do his homework a little bit better or do his chores a little bit better. Your husband or wife will start wanting to do a few things better. Your athletes will do better. Your employees will do better, but you start catching people being good. And it's amazing how much more you'll have inspired people.
Oh yeah. That positive feedback. Giving other people, like you're absolutely correct. My best bosses are the ones who cared and loved us, right? I worked extra hard for them because I just didn't want to let them down. Not that any other person I would have did the work because that's just who I am. But those people that I knew cared, I stayed just a little bit late, just to make sure stuff was good because I wanted them to be okay and them not take any heat rounds. But I want to shift a little bit, right? So you seem to be a pretty smart individual because you wrote a few books, right? So you got a few books under your belt. Like, am I right? The Bus Trip, the Captain. Like, tell us about your books and what are they about? What lessons are they supposed to impart?
Well, my high school teacher was as surprised as anyone that I wrote any books. We've written 5 so far at the time of this recording. We actually have a couple more in the works right now that we're writing. The first one was the toughest because I kept shooting myself in the foot for 20 years. I kept saying, "Oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough." I had all these ideas to write a book and I just never did it. And this thing kept going off in my mind, a year from now, you'll wish you started today. And after about 20 years, I was like, dude, I don't have any books. I need to get going on this. And so we started writing books that we thought people would want. And we've written 3 fictional books, 3 nonfiction. and then 2 fictional or 2 stories. So the 2 stories are the bus trip, and that's probably my favorite one I've written. It's about a basketball team on a road trip, and they're having a challenging season, like a lot of us do. Most teams have a challenging season. Maybe they're still winning, but it could be challenging. Injuries or people not getting their way, agendas, those kind of things. And on this bus trip, they have different conversations, and the players themselves come to understand what it's like to be a better leader, to be a better teammate, to hold each other accountable, to hold their friends accountable. And so that's one of my favorite books, or that's the favorite book I've written. The Captain was, so the bus trip was more about we're all leaders. We all can influence our friends and move people forward. The Captain was more about a specific positional leader, somebody with status. So it was this football player that had always been the quarterback, like the Heisman winner. He'd always been on top of the game. And so everyone thought he was a leader. He thought he was a leader just because he had status. And he ends up being a naval aviator, you know, a pilot, a really good pilot, but he's always gotten by. His talent leads him to think that he's something special. But he really didn't know how to lead people. He didn't really know how to inspire people. People followed him because he was talented and had a position. They didn't follow him because they wanted to. They didn't follow him because he could help them or he inspired them. And so we wrote that book really for captains or even coaches to take a look at their own life. Am I actually inspiring people, or are people just doing what I tell them to do because I'm in charge? I'm in a position of leadership. And that's how, you know, most politicians are. That's how most CEOs are. That's how most, you know, leaders are, head coaches are, whatever. We have a position of leadership. And so we expect people to follow us. But the problem is, are they following us through thick and thin? Or, you know, are they going to follow us when things are going tough? Are they going to follow us? Are they going to take ownership in what's going on? Are they going to help someone else follow us as well? And most of the time, if all we have is our position, that falls apart fairly quick. Now, I know when you're talking about the military, where you've had a long and distinguished career, people will follow you because of your position longer than they will in the private sector or in coaching, because that's a culture of still status and position means more. But at the end of the day, eventually that's going to fall apart if people think you're incompetent or you absolutely don't care, or they're putting you in harm's way. At some point, positional is great if you're also inspiring too, because then your platform is huge. That's what you're trying to get to. But if it's just positional, that's like the most basic form of leadership, and that falls apart really quickly.
Yeah, they say you can either manipulate folks or you can inspire them. You know, and I think that's the juggle between leaders in all organizations, whether it's sports or whether it's the out here in the military, or, you know, the institutional world, or you're teaching in schools or anything. You're still a leader, and you still got a lot of things going on. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to hit this final segment, Jamie.
Hello, welcome to Veritas. I'm your host, Adam Colazetti, and I'm here to guide you on a meditative adventure like no other. Join me and lose yourself in your imagination as we travel the outer reaches of the cosmos, quest for powerful talismans, and explore the inner realm of your subconscious. What might you find along the way? But be warned, fair traveler, this path is not for the faint of heart. On this path, of one thing I am certain, dragons be here. Are you ready?
All right, we're back. So I wanted to dive back into Success is a Choice, the podcast. And because I'm interested in, like, you're interviewing all these people, these leaders from various industries, you know, like, what are some of the lessons you learned from interviewing all those folks?
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons is there's a lot of failure. There's a lot of failing forward. John Maxwell wrote a book called Failing Forward. There's a lot of failures, and I should probably put them in air quotes, you know, where you get knocked down, but then a lot of these, guests that we've had, or all of these guests, they have a story or many stories of when they got knocked down, but then they were able to get up again. And it might not be getting up as quickly as they'd like or as quickly as someone else, but they got back up again. And I think that that's one of the biggest takeaways I have, is that oftentimes people think, well, all right, if so and so is worth $300 million, or so and so is a Grammy winning entertainer, or so and so has won these championships, well, their life has been all rainbows and butterflies. That's not the case at all. They have quote unquote failed a lot of times, and there's the story of Michael Jordan failing, missing 10,000 shots in his career. Well, Babe Ruth, Reggie Jackson, I know those are old school. Reggie Jackson is the all-time leader in strikeouts, but he also hit a million home runs back in the day. People fail. People have setbacks. And what do you do with that? How do you respond to the adversity? Talk about resiliency, talk about mental toughness. Mental toughness isn't always, the Navy SEAL mentality. It's not always just the, well, I broke my leg and I still dragged myself 5 miles, with another person on my back. It's not necessarily that. Sometimes it's just the resiliency of, I was able to bounce back quicker today than I was yesterday, or when I had a negative thought come in my mind, I was able to get rid of that negative thought a little bit quicker today than I did yesterday. It's not that you're perfect and have pure thoughts all the time, or that you have pure actions or do the right things. It's that when you don't do the right thing, when you don't make the right choice, success is a choice, but when you make a poor choice, do you bounce back from that quicker than you would have in the past? Are you able to respond better or quicker than maybe somebody else, or more importantly, how you would have in the past? It's a day-to-day type thing. And you might take a step back. You know what? We now take a step further, moving forward. And it's a constant journey. And that's what I kind of learned. You kind of know that ahead of time, especially being in athletics. But when you hear all these people's stories, because we've interviewed people, poker champions, Pussycat Doll, pastors, athletes, coaches, Shark Tank people, we interview all these different types of personalities and people from different industries, but they all have some stories from their life that, I screwed up. I didn't do what I should have done, or, I got fired from my job, or I made a stupid decision in my marriage or in my family. Whatever it is, they were always able to overcome that to a degree. They weren't just, handed life on a silver platter and, became successful just because they were born into it. Even people that were born, in privilege, or they appear that they have everything set up for them, they still had to go through some struggles, because there are so many people born into privilege or born with a silver spoon in their mouth that don't cut it, because they make poor choices that lead to some tragic results, or they make some choices that they're not able to respond positively after they make that negative choice. There's so many people that don't respond the right way. So just because you were born with some advantages or had some advantages through your life doesn't mean you'll be a success. But oftentimes that resiliency, man, that is one of the biggest takeaways of interviewing people from all different walks of life, not just sports.
Yeah. And I can tell you, right? So, like, failing your way to success. So I was down and out long time, right? Even time when you knew me, down and out, not feeling right. So when I was a youngster, I felt like the 3rd grade, right? Boom, little stuff. I'm a youngster, right? When I was a senior in high school, I was taking all like freshman level classes because I didn't pass them early on. So I'm just trying to get out of there. As you know, when I got to college, I was academically ineligible my first year. When I got into the military, I had to go to an academic review board because I wasn't doing well in the classes. But even before I got into the Army, you got to have a 110 on the ASVAB test in order to get into the Army and become an officer. I had to take that thing 4 times in order to pass that thing to become an officer. When I got into the active duty military, I failed a few classes, that they sent me to. I'm pretty sure lieutenants don't fail. But ultimately, I was a high performer. I had all of these failures that like drove my choices. So then I started telling people, my biggest asset is I know what failure looks like, and I know what's going to get me in trouble and what I need to learn about. I can see it coming to this point. I have all of this knowledge over all of those years of not meeting the mark initially. And when it came time to operate, I was ready to go. I share that story with you because, failure is a thing that all of us will endure at some point, at some level, whether it be high or whether it be low. It's just part of the makeup of who we are. And in conclusion to the show, Jamy, leave us with some things that we should take home and stick into our kit bag and take into our lives. What do you got for us?
Yeah, well, I'm going to build upon what you just said as kind of a parting or a closing thought, is that we're all going to experience failure. Not all of us on our own, if we're in a silo or on an island, are going to be able to bounce back the way we need to bounce back and respond the way we need to respond. We all need somebody else in our life, and it might be different people at different points in our life to help us, to speak life into us, to be there to encourage, support us, whatever it is. And so most people watching this show, listening to this show, there's going to be somebody in your life that you can add value to or inspire. And it might not even be something that boom hits you in the face. You're like, oh, well, this kid, is an F student. They're doing drugs, they're homeless. It might not be, that extreme. It just might be a kid that's struggling with some mental illness, struggling with some confidence issues, some belief issues. If you can breathe some life into them and give them some positivity with some substance. Hey, Rayshawn, I know you're struggling right now in school, or I know this happened, but I saw you do this last year or last month, or I know that you said you wanted to do this. And you know what? What do you think about if we get together once a week or once a month, or would it be all right if I did this? Or, hey, you know what? I think you can do this today. Whatever that is, it might just be a small thing, but you did not overcome those failures 100% because Rayshawn Warren is the toughest mother out there. I mean, you're tough, but you did not do it 100% by yourself. There were some people throughout your life that helped you along the way, some more than others, but there are people, and the people watching this, there are people in your life that you can help, that you can inspire, that get out of yourself, get out of your way, and say, how can I make other people better today? How can I make situations better? How can I actually make a difference and not make it about me, but make it about the Rayshawns or whoever else is in your life?
Hey, Jamy, thank you for all the insight, man. Today has been very eye-opening, and I enjoy our conversation and you sharing your stories. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably the best way is my website, jamybechler.com. Or if they're on X, they can follow me at Coach Bechler. And I know my name is spelled weird, so it looks like Bechler with a CH, but at Coach Bechler on X or jamybechler.com. And they can find all of our stuff, our podcasts, our books, and, lots and lots of free resources there and articles and just inspiration. And, on social media, if you follow us, we try to be positive. You're not going to know who I voted for, what my favorite team is, or where I ate last night for dinner. We try to put out stuff that'll help others.
Hey, once again, thank you. For everyone out there watching, we thank you for tuning in. That's my boy Jamy right there. Success is a choice. Hey, tune in, go to the website, and everyone else, I'll see you next week. Boom.